Good evening. Welcome to the Black Doctoral Network weekly web series entitled Conversation Starters. I'm your moderator, Fessa Ilonge, and I'm thrilled that you could join us for another wonderful episode of Conversation Starters. Tonight's episode, we will be focusing on maximizing the impact of your doctoral degree. Joining me for this tonight's conversation, we have four expert scholars that are going to share their insights surrounding this topic. The first panelist that will be joining us is Dr. Antoinette Boyd, who is the Director of Career Success and Professional Development at Maryville University. Her research focus include unconscious bias and diversifying faculty and staff. I welcome you, Dr. Boyd.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening.
Thank you. Well, our second panelist joining us this evening is Dr. Samos L. Mays, who is the Park and Recreation Director at Bryant County, Georgia, and adjunct professor at Georgia Southern University. His research focus include leadership, strategic planning, diversity, self-care, and employee development. I welcome you, Dr. Mays.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next panelist that we have joining us is Ms. Trina Bryant, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Student Enrichment at ENC. Her research interests include mindfulness, resilience training, academic success, recruiting and retaining faculty of color. I welcome you, Ms. Bryant.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
Wonderful. And our last panelist joining us this evening is Dr. Frederick White Jr., who is the Senior Management Analyst with the Department of Veteran Affairs. His research interests include leadership, strategic planning, and public policy. I welcome you, Dr. White.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So now that everyone is here, I want to go ahead and get this conversation started by asking you all our first question of the evening. How important is doctoral education in today's society? Dr. Boyd.
Thank you. Really, the most important reason is career management. So as a professional, being able to navigate your career successfully, the doctoral degree is really vital to your future success, depending on what your career goals are. It's helpful to your career progression, and it also helps to ensure that you're able to secure future opportunities. So I know for me as a person of color, it's already difficult enough to navigate our career paths sometimes. And so the lack of an advanced degree can be an additional barrier to that. And so I really think it's important to evaluate your long-term career goals. I think a lot of times people have tunnel vision and just look at the short term. And so if you're just looking at the short term, you may not see the importance of an advanced degree, specifically a doctoral degree. But I think if you look at your long-term career goals, and you look at what you want to do over the next 10 or 15 years, how are you preparing for that now? And I think for specific career pathways, some academic, some non-academic career pathways, in order to effectively manage and navigate your career, you really do need that advanced degree or that terminal degree. And so to me, that's why it was important. And so I think that's why others should consider it important as well.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Dr. Mays, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think it's very important because I think it gives you a leg up to some degree. With me being in Parks and Rec, I don't come in contact with a lot of individuals, that have doctorates, and people really looking at me weird. Well, why do you have that doctorate? I said, because I want to have an advantage. I want to be able to strike up conversations. What are you using that? What are you using that doctorate for? Why is it important to you? So I think it just gives you an advantage. I think in the non-academic world, by having a doctorate, because I think it puts you in a position to have a head start and to really do things that are somewhat different in my realm of parks and recreation.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. And Dr. White, what are your thoughts?
Great comments, and I agree with everything that's been said so far. For me, in addition, a doctoral education really focuses on professional research, and research really should inform current and future practices. And so you have a lot of practitioners. They're out there, they know the work that they do, but how do you continue to improve the work that you do? And so to have a degree behind you that says, you know what, I've invested in understanding the how to, going a little deeper, and I know how to do research, and then I know how research then can inform the practices.
Thank you, Dr. White. And Ms. Bryant.
Yeah, excellent point made by everyone. I wanted to actually touch upon what you said, Dr. White, about informing research and being in a position to be a change agent and having an opportunity to be at the table, and in some cases actually creating your own table. I think that a doctoral degree allows you to do that. I also talk to my students. Some of the things that I do, we have career professional development under the CSC where I work, and we talk to the students about different types of capital. And I think when we think about capital, we think about finances only, and definitely an advanced degree can contribute to that. But I also think it's important to think about your education as securing social capital as well as, I would say, intellectual capital, right? So you're learning, you're adding to your knowledge. But for me, and I know we're going to get into this when we talk about some other questions, but it's been a wonderful opportunity to network and to make connections with people that I perhaps would not have made connections with, and these connections have helped me really think outside the box and think about current things that we're currently doing, current practices, and to really build a resource network around me that can help move the needle, make some changes, inform practice, but also help change practices that are not really working. And I think higher ed is, for those of us who are in higher ed, there's a lot of change and there's a lot of opportunity to step in there and be innovative. So, and I think a doctoral, an advanced degree can help you do that.
Definitely. Thank you, Ms. Bryant. And I love everyone's perspective because you all brought a different angle to how important it is, especially in today's society, and having that advantage and being able to be the leaders and the innovators in your industry. So thank you very much for that. So the next question that I have is, what are some strategies to maximize the impact of your doctoral degree? Dr. White.
Yeah, I think this is such an important question because you can have a doctoral degree and, be done, be finished with the process, and not really fully leverage it. And so, when I think about this, I think about how do we fully leverage that degree? And I'll say, even when you're thinking about your research and what your degree is going to be about, focus it around emerging issues, opportunities that exist, problems that exist that really need to be solved. Kind of create a pull system where people, once you complete the degree, you're already in a place where you know there's a need for additional research, for additional leadership, for you to kind of step in and fill that gap. I'll also say translate your research into applicable components. So a lot of the research, especially during that doctoral process, is going to be very technical. People aren't going to be able to understand it. And so you have to be willing and able to translate that technical jargon into things that are applicable to people on a daily basis and that affect what they're doing. That's easy to understand.
Well, thank you, Dr. White, for those points. Dr. Mays, what are your thoughts?
I think to maximize your doctoral degree, I think you have to add something to whatever field that you choose. With me being in Parks and Recreation, I've created probably about 100 different educational sessions that I travel the country and speak on, and that's me taking it to another level. I'm not just throwing balls out and just working with kids and working with the community, but I'm also adding to the profession by understanding how to be a better leader. How to prevent bullying. How to work on self-care. How to do community needs assessments. And I travel the country speaking on those things. So I think that was the whole idea of me getting the doctorate, is because I want to be that practitioner. I want to work in Parks and Rec, but I also want to maximize my impact of my degree by adding something back to the profession. So I think when you add back to the profession, I think it takes things to another level.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. And Ms. Bryant.
I agree with everyone is saying. I was actually thinking of, I think it's called Boyer's model of scholarship. And it talks about like the actual scholarship that we should be doing is we need to be thinking about discovery, integration, application, many of the things that Dr. White talked about. And I think there's so many problems, so many opportunities to shift things that are being done. And my focus is in higher ed. That's not to say that's the only place you can make an impact, as Dr. Mays pointed out, but I think it's really important to be thinking about what's your why, number one. Why are you doing this? What is a problem that needs to be solved? But how can we actually make a difference? And then also, when we think about discovery and integration, thinking about teaching and learning. That's huge. That's huge. And I know we're going to talk more about it, but even as we're looking at the diversity in higher ed, I think we need to be thinking about different ways of teaching. We need to be thinking about universal design. We need to be thinking about, um, you know, direct instruction. Does that really work anymore? Are there ways to marry co-curricular with academics? So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. So I think when you think about maximizing your advanced degree, I think first of all, knowing your why. What is it? Why are you doing this? And I think that's really important. But also, what are some areas that need some tweaking? What are some areas that need to be addressed? What are some areas that there's definitely a need for you to make an impact and to contribute to, I think, academia?
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. And Dr. Boyd.
So I think about it in three parts. I think about before you start your journey, during your journey, and after your journey. So before your journey, certainly thinking about your long and short-term career goals, establishing a vision for what you'd like to achieve and how the value of a doctoral degree plays into that. And then once you begin the program, I think it was really important for me. I was learning so much that was applicable to the work that I was doing every day. And so how do you get practical application almost immediately? So how do you take what you're learning in each of your courses or as you go through your dissertation process? How are you applying that daily or on a semester basis or on a quarterly basis, depending on your work environment? That time frame may be structured differently, but I like to evaluate what have I done this semester that has added value to my institution, to my department, to the area of interest that I have regarding my research. And how am I growing as a scholar practitioner as I'm learning this knowledge and not just waiting until the end to apply it? And then post doctoral degree, I think it's important to not just have your dissertation saved as a file on a computer or sitting on a shelf. How are you applying to present at conferences? Are you working on getting published? How are you further sharing the research that you did that is contributing to your field in a positive way to make sure that you can get it out there in front of the people who need to see it in order to make a positive change and a positive impact? And then I think about, when you think about your research focus, how does that align with, I think Dr. Mace was talking about this, what you want to contribute to your particular field. And so I know for me, I did my research on diversifying faculty and staff because I have a human resource background. And I now work in career and professional development where I'm working with many employers who are in human resources who are hiring our students and graduates. And so I find that this is a topic that is impacting higher ed, but I also see it with the employers that I work with. And so while, my primary focus is to hopefully make some impact in the educational arena, also thinking about how your research can apply to other fields. Is it something that is going to be universally positive for many industries, and how can you be getting it in front of people that can help you make some of those changes and impacts?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I got one comment. I love everything that you just said, and I like the phases that you really kind of broke the question into the strategies into. To one of your early points, a quick something I learned that can shave 1 or 2 years off your doctoral process is to kind of identify what you want to research early in the process. Absolutely. And that way all of the papers, all of the work that you do could be specific and can be supporting that topic. I ended up not identifying my topic till later in my process. And so none of the work that I had did over the course of the last several years was really applicable, and I had to start all over. So if you can identify and align your topic with all of the classes that you're taking, all of the writing that you're going to have to do as part of the process would be useful to getting you to that finish line.
Absolutely. And I want to agree with that. And my topic was something that I was doing in the classroom. I saw a problem and I was like, I want to find a solution. And so it really helped me. And I'm actually doing that now. And I started doing it even before my doctoral work. But I also want to touch upon what another comment around going to conferences, not waiting until the end, trying to, if there's a publication. So my cohort, and I'll talk a bit more about this, but later, but our cohort worked together to put something in the CPED journal and to try to add to scholarship while we were in our first 2 years because we were learning so much. We were learning about scholarship. We were learning this. And so it was a wonderful outlet, but it also helped us slowly build our resume as well. So if there's an association, find an association. Go to some of their conferences, get involved as much as you can. So I think that's an excellent point you mentioned, Dr. Boyd.
Love it.
Thank you. I mean, I'm loving this conversation, and I see a lot of our audience members are tuning in and loving the strategies that our panelists have so graciously provided us with, and just highlighting that there are a lot of different angles and different ways that you can actually maximize the value of your doctoral degree. So thank you all for those wonderful insights. So the next question that I have is, what are some socio-cultural factors that impact the doctoral education? Dr. Mays.
I think one that wasn't very pleasant. I think it was the attitudes in the beginning when I started the process. People were saying, "Well, why do you need that?" Or somebody even said, "You're going to be overeducated." Things like that really motivated me to pursue it even harder. Because like I said, there wasn't a lot of people around me that had it. I didn't have a lot of people really to talk to. So I guess some of the attitudes in the beginning of the process, because I probably quit this thing probably 100 times. My wife always said, "You're not quitting," every time. But I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about support system and things that kind of help you through. But just some of the attitudes. It's really, you really want to be around some positive individuals when you're starting a process like this, because you're going to quit 1,000 times inside your head. But if there's that one person that says, if it was easy, everyone would do it, that's what's going to keep you motivated.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. Dr. Boyd.
So I think for me, I think imposter syndrome is huge. So I think being a young African American female, they're completing their education.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Ms. Bryant, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, excellent points, Dr. Boyd. I was very fortunate that I'm from a family of educators, so I did not necessarily experience not really seeing people with advanced degrees. However, the problem for me was definitely representation. Oftentimes, the programs I went to, a PWI for my undergrad, for my master's program, but in those spaces, I had to latch on to mentors. I had to find my own accountability people who were going to help me push through. So that was definitely challenging. And even in my current space, one of the things that has really, really helped me is creating for lack of a better term, creating my own affinity group. There are a couple of us. Some are in the same institution, some are in other institutions, and it's connecting through the Black Doctoral Network, connecting through Finished or PhD on Facebook and saying, hey, I need support. I'm feeling a little weak and I'm feeling like I can't push through. And so that's been really helpful. But it's definitely been challenging to find mentors, to find people in the spaces that you're occupying for this advanced degree. And so having to do the extra legwork of trying to create your own space. And that takes energy, that takes time. Whereas in another situation, perhaps at HBCU or perhaps at a place where it's already built in and people have that cultural capital piece, it's not an extra burden. So it can be it can be challenging in that space. But I've been really fortunate again to connect with people again through this through the Black Doctoral Network and other places, and really just holding each other together and encouraging each other. And even when we have these conversations in class that you're like, that's kind of a microaggression right there. So being able to debrief and not throwing in the towel and saying, I'm totally done with this, but realizing why we need to finish, because there's an opportunity for us to also create more opportunities for people coming after us. So
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. And Dr. White.
Yeah, I mean, I just echo everything that's been said. Awareness and exposure. Even though I had, a mom, parents that really pushed education, what I heard mostly was you got to go to college, right? And so PhD is college, master's program, then you're talking, a doctoral study. So
Mhm.
it's not even, in many families, it's not even part of the conversation. And when you look around, the people that the community kind of looks up to aren't PhDs. They're the sports, the basketball players. You might get some doctors, lawyers, some of those people in there, but it is just not out there. And so as I'm listening to the conversation, I'm kind of challenging myself to say, how am I going to change this, right? Like, what communities am I going to be able to get in? What youth am I going to try to expose myself to and help them to understand that this is an option that they can take, so we begin to change some of those socio-cultural factors.
Can I add something? I like what you just said about what we can do, and it's crazy now because when I go to the barbershop, when I walk in, hey, Dr. Mays, when you getting that respect in the barbershop, it's starting, and the little kids are hearing that. It's like,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
awesome.
this is
yeah,
something different. So I like that point that you said, Dr.
yeah.
White.
Yeah, I was in a school, and one of the kids they said, "Mr. White." I said, "No, it's Dr. White. There's a big difference."
Nice.
And I don't want to sound cocky, but I think the visibility is necessary because it's just not there. And so they need to ask the questions. Well, what does it mean to be Dr. Mays? What does it mean to be Dr. Boyd? What does it mean? What does that mean? And we need to be ready to kind of answer those questions.
Absolutely. And there is also an economic concern as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was in public school and we were trying to get more diverse educators, especially males of color, it was challenging, not necessarily because people weren't aware of opportunities, but they were concerned about the pay, depending on where you are, and what's their overall benefit. What is my career trajectory, and what does that look like if I take on this job versus another job? So
Right.
that's challenging. And that's the same thing in PWIs. Part of it is microaggressions, racism, but part of it is I think people are like, do I really need to be in that space when I could be in another space, making
Yeah.
more money, being welcomed?
Yeah.
So there's the education piece around that as well.
Thank you all. I mean, our audience members, we have so many comments here. Everyone's definitely loving this conversation. So just want to reach out to everyone that is watching. If you are enjoying this conversation, please like, subscribe, or share this live link with any of your coworkers and colleagues to join in the conversation, give feedback. We have wonderful expert scholars here that are ready to answer any of the questions that you may have. So let's go ahead and continue this conversation with my next question. What types of resources are essential during the doctoral journey? Let's see, Dr. White.
Yeah, I heard someone kind of mention it earlier. You need a support system. Um, you have to have people. You're going to give up. I heard 100 times. I think it was 200 for me, at least. But you're gonna want to quit this process. You're gonna ask yourself, why am I doing it? Why am I? I mean, I was working. I was going to school. I had a son earlier in the process, and sometimes I looked around and I was like, why am I even putting myself through this? And so you need those people that are gonna, give you a good slap in the face and say, keep going. Um, with that, I think you have to have an unrelenting commitment. There is going to be a challenge. This is not an easy process. I think Dr. May said if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And so you need to have, for me, it was faith. That was one of the things. My faith is what I would rely on. I would go back to. And prayer just kind of got me through some of the toughest times. But you need to have an unrelenting commitment to the process.
Thank you, Dr. White. Dr. Boyd, what are your thoughts?
So I think of this in two parts. I think of things that are tangible and things that are intangible, right? So like some tangible resources for me, obviously like an APA manual, some technological resources. So like Deduce was helpful for me if you're doing qualitative research. That's a coding software. SPSS if you're doing quantitative research, right? So some of those things, Grammarly. My dissertation chair was a huge resource for me. We had a really great relationship. And so I certainly recommend that anybody who's going through the doctoral journey develop a good relationship with your chair. And if you don't have one, ask for a new chair because that relationship is essential and vital to your success. And they're probably one of the best resources that you have. And then, as Dr. White was saying, being intrinsically motivated, a will to succeed and to complete the process. But I think additionally, a supportive professional and personal network. So I have friends and family who were cheering for me that they understood that meant sometimes I couldn't be there when they wanted me to be there, but they pushed me to continue and to devote the time and effort I needed to be successful in the program. And then I was very fortunate that about halfway through my doctoral journey, I started working at the university that I got my doctorate at. So I work at Maryville, but I got my doctorate at Maryville. And so there's no one more supportive than when you're a student at the institution in which you're employed, right?
Yeah.
And so I had a whole team of coworkers, a whole team of administrators, my supervisor, who's the vice president. I had a really supportive network of professionals at work who understood that I was, on this journey and who supported me in any way that they could professionally as well. So I think those are the things that really helped me through my journey.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. And you highlighted a very important thing. Make sure you choose your proper advisor, or if you need to change it, because that definitely does impact the process.
Yeah, a change in advisor could set you back a year.
Right. Definitely.
It could, but I think what you're touching upon, Dr. Boyd, is we talk about resource. Your resource is your voice, your ability to advocate for yourself. And I think I've been in situations where I've talked to other colleagues who've gone through the doctoral program and they feel like they're at the mercy of the chair of the program. It's like, no, this is my journey. And I've had conversations in a respectful way with different individuals that said, no, this is what I want to do. This is where I think I'm going. I respect your advice, but these are the things that I need in order to be successful. And if you don't have someone willing to work with you, then perhaps this is not the program for you. It's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, and it's your journey. And hopefully that's not the case. But I have heard stories where it is not pleasant, and I don't think that's what should be for your journey. So I would definitely speak up around that. But I also think going back to the network and the support, that is huge. I think your chair, your committee is obviously very important, but I think when you talk about having a voice and advocating, not only are you advocating for what you need from your chair, from your program, but I think it's also important to advocate for what you need for people around you as well, because it is sometimes it's a very isolating, especially if you don't have a lot of people going through that. And so having a frank conversation with friends or people and saying, these are things that I used to do, but for 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'm going to have to cut back on that, and I need your support. And so I think relying on family and friends, but giving them the information that they need to support you, I think is also very important. And it's okay to say no and say, for right now, for this season, I have to take a break from X, Y, and Z. And I think the family that supports you, the friends that support you will understand that. So that's important.
Thank you. Dr. Mays.
I think it's very important to have a mentor. And once again, and I think in 2014, when I started my program, I was in the barbershop again, and Dr. Charles Bonds came in, and he was the first Black professor at Georgia Southern University, right? And I was telling him that, I just started this program. I'm really excited about it. And he sat me down and he started telling me about doing his dissertation on a typewriter and being the only Black professor at the university and the struggles that he went through. And it's like, just to have him tell me that motivated me. And I think I finished my program in like 2.5 years. And it was based upon just the conversations of what he went through. And I said, if this brother can go through what he went through, be the first Black professor at Georgia Southern, and still be here to tell these stories, I gotta get it done. I owe it to him. So I think having mentors, because like we all said, there's not a lot of people that we can look to, on this journey. But if you can find somebody like that that's been through it, back in the day and survived it and can tell these stories, I think it's very essential and very beneficial for you to have those mentors.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. And thank you all for sharing all the types of resources that are available and just really highlighting to make sure that you have a group of people around you, that support system to help you and keep you motivated. Because like you all have highlighted, there are going to be times when you just want to give up, but you worked this hard. So definitely it is worth the journey. So thank you all for your insight. So the next question that I have is, what are the different academic and non-academic career paths available postdoc? Dr. Mays.
Awesome. I'm glad you asked me that. I knew you were going to ask me that, and I was ready for it. Awesome. Me being the Parks and Rec guy, right?
Yes.
Like I told you, I wanted to be the Parks and Rec director that was different from everybody else in America, right? So everyone was like, what are you going to do with that doctorate? I said, you're going to see what I'm going to do with it. So what I did was, once I completed it, I got on the conference circuit, right? And I started speaking. And I want to say that the Black Doctoral Network was the first opportunity that I had just a year ago to be on this stage. It was the first opportunity I had. And ever since I did that, I've been booked every month, everything. I've traveled the country thanks to the Black Doctoral Network giving me this platform. So that is the non-academic path I take. Now, I'm an adjunct professor, but I really enjoy speaking and traveling. And I think that that's the route that I utilize the doctor. Because when they say, well, Parks and Rec director, Dr. Mays, we want to hear what this guy's got to say. So I think that's the non-academic path that I chose.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. Ms. Bryant.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in hearing what Dr. Boyd has to say about that. She's the career professional, but I'm actually in the process. I'm in my last year, so I'm actually exploring that now. One of the resources that I've been using two things: is card sorts, which we could again talk about later, and then also Imagine PhD, which are to me two helpful resources to help me think about my values, to think about what I'm looking for, because I do think that for many of us, you get an advanced degree, and of course you're going into higher ed, of course. But I do think I'm exploring options right now. So I love teaching, but I've also in the past I've consulted to help with curriculum, to help with assessment and other things that can impact student success. So I think that's a huge opportunity. And I think with COVID and many of the things that have happened over the past few years, there are some research that are looking at people. Some of people are calling it like this mass exodus, but I think there are people really reevaluating time, money, and what they want to do. And so I think in that there's a lot of opportunity. I have a couple of former colleagues who are now consulting with assessment teams. That's a big buzzword in higher education, right? Assessment, student success. So those are possibilities that I'm exploring. And with my work in mindfulness, thinking about ways to thinking about perhaps going back to secondary ed and seeing what can be done there. There's a lot of opportunity to build partnerships, I think, between secondary ed and higher ed that could impact student success. So there's, again, the traditional academic publish or perish, work at an institution, but I also do think that even before COVID, but I think COVID has created opportunities for people, especially virtual work. So I think there's opportunities, but that's something that I'm exploring right now.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. And Dr. Boyd.
Well, I hope I don't let you all down with my
I didn't need to give you pressure.
Really just speaking from the perspective of my own experience, and then I've been in career development. I've worked for government and higher ed, and then I was also in human resources. And so I think, the most traditional career pathway is obviously the professorate, right? Like you get your doctorate and you're you're a teaching professor. But I think it's important to look at what's behind teaching, right? There's teaching, there's learning, there's research, there's service, there's scholarship. And when you think about the essence of the professorate, that applies to a lot of different industries, right? And so when I think about my government experience, the same principles that apply to the professorate, I could apply to my government experience in workforce development. So I don't think you're limited to any particular career path. I think it's really, as we kind of talked about a few questions ago, looking at what your career goals are and what your research focus can be and what the learning outcomes of your doc program are and how do you apply that to create your own pathway. So I think a lot of times, we look at, okay, well, if I get this doctorate, what can I do with it? But I think it really is about career management and creating the career path that you want. And so I know some opportunities that I've had, particularly combining my research interest again with, my experience in higher ed and then my previous human resource experience. I've had the opportunity to talk to some leadership teams at some colleges and universities who are focused on diversifying their faculty and staff, and they've had me share my research on unconscious bias. And that's a non-traditional, pathway. I didn't see myself as a speaker, even sort of a consultant or, and not that I'm still, certainly working on, those opportunities and improving my own professional development, but speaking opportunities and opportunities to really help others improve their practice based on your passion and your interest. And so I think whether it's government, whether it's corporate, whether it's education, I think you can apply your doctoral education to any of those environments. But I think really the focus is, what do you want to contribute? And if you're able to research, find a problem and go find the data and the research to support your problem and come up with some recommendations and solutions. I don't know any company or industry that's like, nope, we don't want that, right?
Right.
So I think it's really just creating the career path that you want and really being intentional about your doctoral degree and how that's going to help you create and navigate your career path.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Dr. White.
Hey, I don't have any additional comments to add. I think they covered it all.
Okay. No, thank you.
I was actually going to say that, like, I was thinking back to what Dr. White said about thinking about a problem, thinking about something that perhaps needs your expertise and fixing, and I think that could help you define where you're going. Right. Right now, the buzzword is DEI. Even though we're like we needed this a while ago, but post George Floyd, that's an opportunity right there to speak around those things, to think about universal design in the classroom, stress management for students. So I think that goes back to what you were talking about, Dr. White, about is there a problem? How can you contribute? How can you be a part of the solution? And that can also help chart your path for you.
Definitely. You want to say something, Dr. Mays?
Yeah, I was going to say, like Dr. Boyd was saying, with the speaking opportunities, I've been at conferences where I'm like the only African American at a conference and speaking on diversity. Now that's real diversity for the crowd to hear somebody talking about that. So just to be in all those different venues and speaking, I think it goes a long way.
Absolutely.
No, definitely. And I think the main thing that I've heard from everyone here is the endless opportunities with having a doctorate degree. I mean, it's almost pretty much creating what you feel as though your voice and what you want to advocate for with the research that you have done. So definitely thank you all for just highlighting the significance of that from an academic and non-academic standpoint. So thank you. So the next question that I have is, do you think that the current educational system provides the necessary foundation for Black doctoral students? Dr. Boyd.
I think in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I'll say specifically for me in my program, I noticed a lot of diversity amongst the student population, not a lot of diversity amongst the faculty population. And so I think we need to get those two things in better alignment. It is, as we talked about before, representation matters, right? And so part of the program, like we talked about the dissertation chair and having that relationship is, it's not to say people of varying identities can't have that relationship, but I think it's really, sad, and it can be a barrier if it's a student of color and there's no faculty of color, or if I'm a female and there's no female faculty. So I think we need to do better about practicing what we preach. As far as, most institutions have on their website and their strategic plan, we want to create access and opportunity. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to us. But and we say that, but we know that what we do is much more important than what we say, right? And so I think we want to see some action behind that. Because, certainly we wouldn't want to, say a student's success is dependent solely upon that. It's not, but that certainly is a factor and a barrier to, students of color or students from underserved populations attaining a terminal degree, such as a doctoral degree.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Boyd. And Dr. White.
Yeah, so, great question. I'm going to go back to what I heard Dr. Boyd say on one of the original questions. The vision and what well, let me start by answering the question. I say yes. It provides the necessary foundation for all students, to include Black doctoral students. The system's there. There's so many choices about schools. There's so many choices about career paths. The system is there. The structure, the processes are there. You're going to experience barriers. You're going to be in situations where you're going to be one of the few, depending on what environment you're in. But again, that's where that commitment to what you're trying to achieve, a clear vision, a clear strategy is going to be helpful to ensure your success. It's really important to know the why. And I heard that earlier. If you don't have a why are you getting your degree? Is it just so that you can say I'm a doctor? That could be a reason, but is that good enough? Really have a reason for why you're going to go through that process, because it's going to be a tough process. And so there are other options. So there really needs to be a purpose and a strategy to be successful.
Well, thank you, Dr. White. And I know that you're having to leave us very shortly. So I just wanted, before you left us, to ask you a very important question that we ask all of our panelists that join us on Conversation Starters. How has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network helped to enhance you professionally and or personally?
Right. And I think it was Dr. Mays that said that talked about all of the opportunities that he had and how it started with the Black Doctoral Network. Really, the Black Doctoral Network provides an opportunity to share the knowledge and expertise. We can consistently be featured to share our topics, receive training that's important to continue development, not just my development, but the development of us as a whole. And so the networking, the professional relationships, being able to work with other like-minded people through this network, there's been a lot of collaborations and partnerships with other people, other organizations. And so it's just really been great to be a part of the Black Doctoral Network.
Awesome. Now, thank you, Dr. White. And
Thank you.
one more thing before you go, if you could share your contact information with the audience members, just in the fact that they wanted to connect with you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay. So thank you, Dr. White, for joining us. We're going to go ahead and continue this conversation. I believe, Ms. Bryant, did you have an opportunity to answer?
Oh, about the Black Doctoral Network, how they've...
No, we're going to go back to our question, the educational system, providing the necessary foundation. For
I was like, we're ending already?
No.
I agree with what Dr. White said somewhat, and then and mainly what Dr. Boyd said. I do think that there's a structure there, and even with its limitations, we're succeeding. Hashtag Black Excellence. So we will work through it, and that's the story of, I think, of African American people in America. We will work through it, and hey, we built Black Wall Street. So, however, I do think that institutions who are wanting to retain, wanting to make sure that students persist and excel, we do need to be thinking about representation. And even if at this present moment, an institution does not have the staff or faculty of color that would be beneficial, then looking at partnering with another organization or looking at partnering with a group that can provide mentorship. One of the things that my research partner and I, Patricia Timmons, were looking at, we were looking at PWIs versus HBCUs, and we made recommendations on how we can support students. And one of the things that we were looking at is the opportunity for collaborations between institutions, between PWIs and HBCUs, or between other organizations that can provide that, between association groups. So, one of the things that we've been looking at in my school as well, because we're dealing with that, is, well, we want more representation in STEM. So we don't have it on campus, but maybe we can collaborate with the Association of Black Engineers, or we can do other things. So I think it's easy to say, oh, well, we're trying. But if you're really trying, there are so many opportunities out there. If you don't have the people on campus, then you have to do the legwork of looking outside and building those partnerships that could help students. So I do think there's structure, and I do think that, as I said, we're like roses in a concrete world. We will persist because that's what we do. But I do think that one of the things that I'm interested in looking at and using my advanced degree to think about ways that we can support not only undergrad but grad students as well, and thinking about those strategic partnerships that could really change the lives of students and provide that mentorship that I think that Mays talks about is so important as you're navigating this journey.
Thank you. Dr. Mays.
Awesome. My turn. So I got mixed feelings on it, but I'll tell you what Georgia Southern has done. They have brought me back and allowed me to design my own course, my own graduate course. And I don't know if I actually deserve that, but I'm glad they did it, because they opened the class up and it filled up in like 2 days. So people, and I saw, why are these people looking at me on LinkedIn? And they said, well, they're looking at you on LinkedIn because those are students that are taking your course, and we told them to go look you up. So I think Georgia Southern, being, I guess, PWI, as the future Dr. Bryant says, I think with them doing something like that and putting me, under the spotlight that way, I think is what you have to do. You have to bring people back and show them, because the faculty is not really represented by a lot of African Americans, unfortunately. So bringing me in and allow me to create that course and to be seen as someone who got a bachelor's and master's here, got a doctorate, and came back, I think is what the universities have to do, just to kind of showcase. Because, like I said, I'd have anybody to look up to or really to motivate me through this process. So now that I'm in this position, I can serve as that for others.
No, thank you. And I just love a lot of the answers that you all are providing, and really highlighting the necessary support needed, especially for Black students going through this process, and the external and social, cultural, a lot of issues that they are exposed to, and how, we can support them. So thank you all for those answers. So the next question that I have for you all is, and I know we highlighted this throughout this episode, but how significant are collaborations between academic leadership, local organizations, and other stakeholders in career selection for doctoral students? Dr. Mays.
I think it's very important. In Parks and Recreation, I work with everyone, local boards of education, family connections, lower income organizations. And I think it's very important, because I think when you have someone, that has the academia behind them, I think you work better with others, because I think when you include education in everything that you do, I think it's better for everyone involved, So I think, from a stakeholder standpoint and local organizations, I think when they see me being a Parks and Rec director that has that doctorate, I think they're more apt to partner, more apt to do things, with us because of that. So I think very, very important in career selection for doctoral students when it comes to those things.
Thank you. Dr. Boyd.
So I think collaboration is extremely important from a workforce development standpoint and a career success standpoint. industry and education should be strong partners for one another, because industry should be helping to inform the learning outcomes of what students are learning in the classroom, because ultimately they're going to go and work for those entities. And academia should be preparing students to go work for those companies. So I do think the two are really important. But further, I think that when you think about some of those career pathways that may be available to postdoc students, I think really aligning some of those career pathways with some of those employers and having those partnerships can allow you to do that. So what are some of the entities that have hired previous grads from specific programs, and how can you create partnerships to create a talent pipeline for, for those employers if they're looking for, or particularly if they're needing professionals who would have a doctoral education. So I think really just aligning outcomes. A lot of times our outcomes overlap, regardless of whether we're a nonprofit organization, educational entity, or corporate or industry. A lot of our outcomes, are aligning, because in order for us to have a strong workforce and a strong economic region, our partnerships are going to be vital to that. And then our student success is going to be dependent upon the quality of our partnerships and what we expose them to as far as opportunities.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd. Ms. Bryant, what are your thoughts?
I don't have a ton to add. I agree with both Dr. Boyd and what Dr. Mays said. The only thing that I would kind of reiterate is the necessity of partnerships. And I just want to give an example. So I'm getting my doctorate at Regis College, and they have every semester speaker series, and they invite different people from the industry, relationships they've cultivated over the years, and that's part of the class. So we go in, we have our first hour, but then we get to meet with different people. We met with an educator from South Africa. We're going to meet with someone from Dublin. We met with a government official. We met with consultants. And what was great about that, not only were we able to actually talk to someone about their experience, but they were able to share with us potential problems that still need fixing. And so we were able to be thinking about, maybe I need to think about this with my research, and maybe this is where I can make kind of inroads, and maybe this is a possible career path. So that has been really, really helpful. And that's another opportunity as well. I think kind of confirming what Dr. May says, that's also an opportunity if you don't have a ton of diversity in the faculty and staff to bring in those individuals from diverse backgrounds who are in these various fields. So again, the speaker series has been huge for us. It allowed us to make connections with people in the industry, but it's also allowed us to really rethink possible research options, especially in the beginning of our journey. That was super helpful. And many of these individuals we've been able to connect with on LinkedIn, and some people have gotten opportunities to visit their podcast or to partner with them in other ways. And so I think that part of the cultivating relationships and partnerships can be super beneficial to the college as well as the student.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. And I just want to thank all the panelists here this evening for just the extreme insight and just providing a lot of from your own personal experiences and what you all have gone through and how you were able to navigate the doctoral journey and where you all now, just highlighting the impact that you are currently making. And I just want to thank you tremendously for taking the time out this evening to share your insight. As you can see, a lot of our audience members were thoroughly engaged, and I just want to thank you, because for a lot of the students, especially doctoral students, just hearing from individuals that have gone through that journey definitely helps. And just being that face and representation is very, very important. So thank you.
I'm still in the journey.
Yes, I understand. And just being here and getting this information definitely is helpful. But before we go, because this concludes this segment, I do have that special question to ask each one of you all with regard to BDN, which is, how has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network helped to enhance you personally and or professionally? We'll start with Dr. Mays.
Last year this time you all put me on that real cool flyer. It made me feel so important. And And you've done it again with this particular broadcast. So it's meant so much to me, being in the spotlight that way, and you guys give me that opportunity, and I'm still getting these opportunities because I started with you all. So like I said, I'm forever loyal to BDN. And I just want to thank you all, but it's really impacted my career. It's done great things for me, and I'm really appreciative of it.
No, thank you, Dr. Mays, and we love having you again here, and we will continue to have you on definitely other future episodes that we have. Dr. Boyd.
Well, I just first want to say thank you. I'm very fortunate to be part of the Black Doctoral Network. It's provided me with tons of professional development opportunities from the different podcasts and workshop series and conversations that I've been a part of. I also had the opportunity to present my research at the conference. So it was helpful in being able to continue to get my research out there to hopefully improve practice in our field. But the professional networking, I would say, is probably what's been the most valuable for me. I know this is the second time Trina and I have been on the same session. We worked together. We were together for the conference. And so I know that this is certainly a relationship that I want to continue to foster. So I'll probably be reaching out to her for opportunities to further, work together. And the work that kind of overlaps that we both have research interest. And so it's opportunities like that that are just invaluable. And opportunities to, again, just speak and engage with other professionals and talk about important topics that are going to help us all as we navigate our careers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd, and we definitely appreciate your membership and continuing with us.
Yeah.
Ms. Bryant.
I feel like everyone always says everything I'm going to say, but no, thinking about Dr. Mays, I think last year we were both on that panel, so that was exciting. And Dr. Boyd, it was great to chat with you during our conference presentation. For me, this has been so valuable. I was able to connect with my research partner here, and we presented, and we did that last year, and this has really helped kind of keep us on track. This is one of our things that we have in our calendar. We're like, okay, so we know we need to work towards X, and that really helps focus us. But I will kind of echo what everyone has said. It's been a really inspiring process, the networking, but also, to be honest, seeing so much excellence, amazing people. It is really inspiring. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your opinion, for most of my career, I've worked and I've gone to PWIs, and I've had interesting and sometimes amazing experiences, but it is often very challenging to find mentorship, to find representation, to find that collaborative opportunity that happens, I think, in a network like this. And so I've been really grateful for the opportunity to not only present twice, but also to connect with individuals and to just feel inspired. Every time I come to the conference, I feel so inspired. Every time I watch the podcast, I just feel encouraged. And so that's really been important to me, and I'm forever grateful for the Black Doctoral Network.
Thank you. Thank you for all the love. We definitely appreciate it. But before we go, I wanted you all to take an opportunity to share your contact information with the audience members if they would like to connect with you. Dr. Boyd, how can they get in contact with you?
I'm happy to continue the conversation. If you would like to reach out to me via email, my email address is aboyd2@maryville.edu. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Bryant.
And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Trina Bryant, and I would love to chat. And there's also a video conference option, so we can do that as well.
Thank you. And Dr. Mays.
Yes, you can reach out to me at leadership@mrlainfo.com. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to say another thank you for taking some time out again this Thursday evening to share your insight regarding maximizing the impact of your doctoral degree. If you've enjoyed this conversation and would like to keep up to date with the latest BDN developments, please be sure to check us out on blackphdnetwork.org, and become a member or follow us on Facebook at Black Doctoral Network. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe, and share this live link with your professional networks, families, and colleagues. I'm your moderator, Feste Longe. We look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good night.